Hi, I'm Ron Wilkie. I am your cybersecurity quarterback. Right? Just like you got a football team and you need a quarterback to take you down the field and score that touchdown, I am your cybersecurity quarterback. CISSP, PMP, and we're basically going to talk about securing your sensitive data, and we're going to hold it to the level of PCI standards. Right? So if you have card holder data, if you have sensitive data, and you really want to protect it, these are the standards that you're going to live by. And the reason why we use these standards is because usually when there's a breach, you'll hear that, oh, we've been breached, but they didn't get our card holder data. That's because it's held to a different standard. So we're going to go over those standards. So the point and purpose of this video, the things that I want you to learn, this is an introductory video. This is going to be a series of videos, and we're going to dive down deep into the different aspects, into the weeds of it. But right now, this is just very high level. We're going to talk very high level. So this is what you should learn in the course of the next couple of minutes. What is PCI? What are the standards? How do card payments get processed? And who is a service provider and what do they do? Alright, so what is PCI? As you can see on the screen, stands for Payment Card Industry. What is PCI SSC? Payment Card Industry Security Standards Council. What do they do? If you accept, store, transmit, or process credit card information, the SSC, they will provide technical and operation details for protecting that data. Right? And you have to adhere to this to be in compliance. So we're talking about credit card data, but you can use this for any type of data that you want to keep secure. Okay? So why don't people use this standard for everything? It's because it's expensive. It requires more resources, more man hours to do these things. And sometimes just because you can doesn't mean that's the best security for your data. You should tailor your security based on the data, not that you're going to use the best security for every single thing, because that's not prudent. And I have other videos about security theories and all of that, but we're just basically talking about PCI. So what are those standards? So there are 12 of them. One is install and maintain a firewall configuration to protect cardholder data. Right? You need a firewall, and the reason why is because you want to segment your credit card data from all your other types of data, because you're going to add a different level of security to your credit card data, like we just mentioned before. So, or your sensitive data. So you want to protect it with firewalls. Number 2, do not use vendor supplied defaults for system passwords and other security parameters. So you probably have a router at home right now, and it has default passwords all in there. You need to change those, because once somebody connects to your not really connect to your network, but they scan your network, they find out what type of routers you're using, then they can just go ahead, look up the default password for that router and log in as an admin and change your settings. Or once they have admin access, then they can look throughout your entire network that's connected to that particular router. An example of that, I think I already pulled up something. Let me see what I have. Yeah, so this is a default password list, as you can see right here. So let's say you're using Netgear. Click on in, go to Netgear, and the particular type of product for Netgear, and you can see user admin and password. That's the default. And if you want to know the address, 192.168.1.1, that's what it would be on the internal network. So you want to make sure you change your default passwords. Right? So that's just an example. And I'm not going to go through each one of these in this video, but in my follow-up videos, I'm going through each one, and we're going to look at all of the standards one by one, and look at all of the subsets of those standards. Alright, so number 3, protect cardholder data. There are certain things you're supposed to do for that. Encrypt transmission of cardholder data across open and public networks. You encrypt them because, in transit, you want them to be secure. You don't want them to be in open plain text, because if someone connects, and I have a video about that, you can look at it, but if someone connects to the server while it's in transit, then they can see what's being sent. So that's why you always want to go to HTTPS, and you want to make sure you're using TLS 1.2. Again, those are other videos. Use a regularly update antivirus software or programs. You just want to stay up to date. and we're going to go through each one of these. Develop and maintain secure systems and applications. So all of these different standards exist to protect your sensitive data. And we're going to go through each one. This is just an intro overview. Maintain a policy that addresses information security for employees and contractors. You basically want to make sure that you have written out policies that your employees and contractors view and sign off on, saying that they're going to adhere to doing certain things a certain way to protect the sensitive data. For instance, they're going to use certain amounts of passwords. For instance, they're not going to put sensitive information in the cloud or on public access social media platforms. So that would be, those are like policies. And then you have standards and guidelines, but this is referring to overarching policies. Alright, so let's talk about the changes to security standards. You don't just keep these standards and live by them forever. There's a life cycle of how these changes or these standards get looked at, reviewed, and changed, and you can look at that here. Standards are published in November. Standards are effective that following January. During the year, the market implements them. Feedback begins, and then the old standards are retired on December 31st. So then now you're actually living by your new standard. There's a feedback review of those new standards. At this point, they're not new standards, they're just standards. And now you want to start drafting, based on that feedback, drafting new standards for the upcoming changes to those standards. Then there's a final review, and then the new standards are published, completing that life cycle. So basically, they're published, they're effective, they're implemented, they're reviewed, then they are new standards are drafted, they're reviewed, and then they're actually published, completing that cycle. Alright, and let's see what else we got. So let's just talk about card processing. And again, these are overviews. We're going to talk about this in so much depth later on. You have your card holder, that's the person buying something. The merchant, that's the company that they're buying it from. The acquirer, that's the company the merchant has purchased or has asked to process the cardholder data or the cardholder transaction. And the issuer, that's the bank that the cardholder belongs to. So as an example, you want to come into my store and you're buying something. I'm the merchant. You're buying Ron's sweater. So I hire an acquirer like Merchant Services. Merchant Service will make sure that they find out who your bank is by using a payment brand network. And then once that payment brand network, you know what? I got a slide for it. This whole process is called authorization. After that, there's clearing and settlement. So the process I was just describing is such that we were down at this part. The issuer approves the purchase, so your bank will approve the purchase. After the payment brand has determined the issuer, which is your bank, the payment brand determines who your bank is, and then they will request the approval for purchase. The issuer, your bank, will approve the purchase. The payment brand network then will send the approval to my acquirer, which is like, again, like Merchant Services or companies like that. Then the acquirer will send that approval to the company, to me, the merchant. And then the cardholder completes the purchase and you're able to get the sweater from me. Right? All of this takes, what, 5 seconds? You know, you're in the store, you're at the grocery store, you know, you're buying your stuff. It goes again to the acquirer. The acquirer will go to the payment brand network, and then the payment brand network will approve the purchase through the issuer, and then the issuer will send that back to the payment brand network. The payment brand network will send it to the acquirer will send it to the merchant, and then you get your groceries. Whew. All in 5 seconds, right? So that was the authorization process. Now the actual clearing process, the acquirer sends the purchase information to the payment brand network. So think about this. The payment brand network will then send that purchase information. It's the same stuff that just happened, but now it's in more detail to the issuer. Like, you bought this sweater from Ron, and here's all the information about it. The payment brand network provides the complete reconciliation to the acquirer. Very important. Now the settlement process, in that clearing process takes 1 to 2 days, usually 1. The issuer determines the acquirer via the brand network. Again, same thing. The issuer now sends the payment to the acquirer, like I said, like a merchant services. Then the merchant services or the acquirer pays the merchant for the cardholder purchase. The issuer bills the cardholder. So that's why people like American Express, they may charge 3% or 3.5% for each transaction that they do for the merchant. Visa, I can't remember what these, so don't quote me, but I think Visa is like 2.5 and Discover maybe 2.5 or 2.7. I think Visa may be 2, I can't remember. But they charge for that service right here. The acquirer. Let me see if I can go back a couple of slides. And they contact the payment brand network. So I actually could add payment brand network right here. Alright, so let's keep it moving. And the last thing we want to talk about in this high level presentation are service providers. These are people who have anything to do with the processing, transmitting, or storing credit card data. So for instance, in that last example, what if during this process you're online? Or what if during this process the salesperson is over the telephone? Well, that would be considered a third-party service provider. So let's talk about them. Web hosting. So let's say your website is hosted on GoDaddy, and let's say GoDaddy has a data center. Well, those things will then be in scope for PCI review. Let's say you have a customer service company that's handling purchase over the telephone. We talked about transaction processors, third-party sales organizations. Let's say you have a firewall that's segmenting or providing segmentation from the rest of your network or your cardholder data. And let's say somebody else is providing that service. We're not talking about the firewall hardware, but the service of managing that firewall. Well, then that will be in scope. Maybe not the hardware itself, but the managing and the configuration of that firewall. And we talked about sales organizations. So that's my presentation, this high level presentation. We used up 13 minutes. Sorry it was so long, but now let's get into a little bit more detail about the different types of PCI standards that are out there.